The Sustainable Development Goals were agreed by every country in the UN, all 193 countries, in September 2015 as the roadmap for a decent world. They say that we should end poverty, share prosperity, be inclusive, fair to women, to the poor, to the minority groups, to everybody, so that we're making an inclusive society, and stop wrecking the planet. Climate change, massive pollution, deforestation. So these goals lay out 3 pillars: economic, social, and environmental. They really make sense. We're supposed to achieve them by 2030. We're way off track, and we got to get on track.
Okay. When you say we're way off track, that has a clear financing implication. What is it going to take from the point of view of financial resources to achieve the SDGs by 2030?
We need basically 2 things. One is the financial markets are still putting money in the wrong places. They're still going for coal, for oil, for gas. That's wrecking the planet. That's why we have these hurricanes. That's why we have the floods, the droughts, the heat waves. The financial system has to invest in sustainable, sensible programs. The second is the rich who are sucking up all of the increased income and wealth in the world need to be taxed more so that the poor people can have schools, clinics, basic infrastructure. These are the 2 things that are needed. Some basic fairness in the system, and stop wrecking the planet with unsustainable projects of deforestation and fossil fuels.
Okay. We drill down a little bit more on that. So when you talk about raising resources, how specifically would you raise the resources? You talked about, through more fairness and more equity. What exactly would you have in mind there?
Well, decent countries collect taxes decently and then spend it to ensure that everybody can have health, education, and basic infrastructure. My favorite countries are the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway. They tax nearly half of their national income, but then everybody gets good quality of life. My country, the United States, tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for the rich. It's crazy, because then poor people don't even get basic health care. That's how nasty the United States is right now with all these corporate tax cuts. So the first thing is, governments need to raise the revenue so that they can provide the services for everybody. Second, rich countries a long time ago promised to help the poor countries, but again, my country, the United States, is so greedy. It's spending 30 times more on the military than it is on development aid right now. That's making the world less safe and more unfair. So we need countries like the United States to follow through on basic help for poor countries. Trump says, we're going to cut aid. Absurd, cruel. We have to raise the development aid. The U.S. is so rich that it could ensure that every child has health care and schooling. That's what we need to do.
Right. So as you know, the IMF has estimated recently that achieving the SDGs across 49 low-income developing countries cost around $520 billion a year by 2030. Is that doable?
The IMF did a great analysis, because IMF has the best fiscal analysts in the whole world. This is the organization that knows how budgets work. And so the Fiscal Affairs Department did a wonderful study. What does it take in health and education, water, sanitation, electrification? And lo and behold, of course, for the poor countries, it takes more than they have.
Right.
And
right.
There's a financing gap, and the IMF found it and showed it. And we've got to find about half a trillion dollars a year. That sounds like a big number, but the United States by itself makes $20 trillion of output every year. The world economy is $100 trillion. So what the IMF showed was that for the poorest countries, the gap is very large as a proportion of their income. But for the world, it's tiny.
Right.
It's it's about 0.5% of GDP. That's all it takes to make decency in this world.